Hi, thanks for joining a new video. Today we review the Honor 400. Let's begin. This is a device from Honor targeting the upper mid-range market. It launched at a price of 12,999 pesos, roughly $700. Keep in mind, prices differ from those in Mexico, taxes are included, and it comes only with a 12GB RAM and 512GB storage configuration. You're already noticing one of its key strengths. I believe it is a device that can compete. Well, in its price range, it stands out because it offers several advantages. Although it will also have a few minor aspects that could be improved, which I will be discussing with you throughout this entire video. First of all, it's important to note that if you make your purchase at the official Honor store, they will provide you with the Honor Choice headphones and the Honor Watch 5 as part of the package. These are excellent gifts that truly enhance your purchase. Additionally, you will receive a 12-month warranty that includes screen protection, a 24-month warranty covering battery protection, and another 12-month warranty for water damage protection. The warranty offered by Honor appears to be one of its most significant advantages. And by the way, if you choose to purchase it at the official Honor store, I am leaving you a coupon that you can use to receive an extra discount. This will be available until August 31st. If you're watching this video after that date, I'm really sorry. Hopefully you'll find it with some promotion. In this price range, it has several competitors, and as I anticipated, I think it has good arguments to fight head-to-head against each of them. Another of its strong points will be the distribution. Not only can you find it in the Honor store, but also in phone companies, department stores, and more. Let's start by describing the design of the cell phone because it has mainly straight lines with very nice rounded corners. In a way, it reminds me of, the design resembles that of an iPhone, and it also reminds me of the Oppo Reno 13 design, which is similar to the iPhone. When we look at the front, we will notice a glass that is entirely flat. This time, Honor does not bet on curved screen, and although the manufacturer does not explicitly detail what level of protection could get to have the screen, fortunately, what we do clarify is that also, as many of their devices have 5 stars from SGS in drop resistance, offering some security. Of course, I don't think it's fragile glass or anything like that, but I would have liked to see Honor Shield glass and those kind of resistances that Honor boasts on some other models. On the sides, we will find plastic frames, another negative point regarding the resistance that could have this cell phone. In side drops on the right side, we are going to find volume buttons along with the power button, while at the top we have infrared microphone designed for universal remote control purposes, along with a secondary audio output feature. The left side is completely clean, and this profile view gives us a glimpse of the thickness, which Honor claims to be 7.3 millimeters. We attempted to measure it, and it showed a variation of plus or minus 7.5 millimeters. This isn't a significant difference, and the device itself weighs 184 grams. In my opinion, it's light and thin, which makes it quite a comfortable device to use. At the bottom, there is a tray where you can insert 2 SIM cards, unless do not buy it with a phone company, because in that case, the second slot might be blocked. Then there is a microphone, along with the USB-C port, and finally, the speaker featuring several circular perforations. The design of the back cover is quite appealing. In this particular case, I have the Meteor Silver Color Edition, which boasts a satin design. It reflects a bit of the lighting, yet nothing in the image looks less than very nice. The camera module also appears original with this design. It is additionally available in Doom Gold and also Midnight Black. Aesthetically, it's a really nice cell phone. Holding it in the hand gives a great feeling as well. The only issue we can point out is its resistance. To begin with, it doesn't promise the same level of durability that the more affordable devices from this brand offer, and it also comes with an IP rating. I mean that it cannot be submerged in water, at least not to a depth of 1 meter. I suppose it will withstand accidental drops into the water at shallow depths, but in the price range, most devices are going to have a higher level of resistance against water, although I insist that with IP66, it should be able to withstand accidental drops, and also considering that they give you 12 months of warranty protection against water damage, I think we can somehow forgive it for this, since to date I had not seen any manufacturer that covered you warranty for water damage. That is why I insist that it will be a competitive device in design, especially because the front design looks very modern, because of the ultra-thin bezels it has, which we are usually only going to find in much more expensive devices. The screen measures 6.55 inches, which is wide enough to offer a good display. However, when combined with the ultra-thin bezels, it provides the sensation of being a compact device. The resolution stands at full HD 1264 by 2736 pixels. While this resolution might be termed 4K by some other manufacturers, technically speaking, it is slightly above full HD. This results in a pixel density of 460 pixels per inch, meaning that all text and content will appear exceptionally sharp and clear. It's a screen that offers excellent detail. Additionally, it's an AMOLED panel with a peak brightness of 5000 nits, providing an almost perfect display in sunlight. This ultra-bright screen offers two color calibration options, normal and vivid. You can also manually adjust the screen's color temperature. However, keep in mind that you can't calibrate the screen color if the visual rest options are turned on. But before we delve into that topic, let me first explain that the exceptionally high brightness level, which this screen supports, can indeed be utilized effectively when you are watching HDR content. In this particular case, I conducted several tests and found that it was indeed compatible with YouTube. Additionally, on Instagram, you can also view these HDR contents, providing you with an experience akin to using a high-end device in this regard. Furthermore, even on Netflix, you can enjoy this feature as it has the necessary certification to deliver this type of content, ensuring a very positive and visually pleasing experience. Additionally, it holds an HDR certification from Amazon. Therefore, when it comes to watching streaming content, this display is going to be an excellent choice. In fact, even if the content isn't originally created in HDR, there's a setting option known as dynamic monitoring. This feature enables us to give videos the impression of being HDR even if they weren't recorded in HDR. Now, this is particularly useful for YouTube videos or any videos you've downloaded and stored locally, making them appear HDR-like. It also includes a feature known as sharp screen, which is similar to the previous feature but is now applied to images. This allows you to optimize the content even if it wasn't created with HDR, so you can enjoy the highest quality on this screen. Although both options may consume a bit more energy, you have the choice to turn them on or off. As for the minimum brightness, it will also be sufficiently low to ensure a comfortable experience. In fact, the dimming rate is 3840 Hz, so even if you were a person very sensitive to the flickering that low brightness displays can cause, you won't notice it in this case. Now, just consider that Honor doesn't include the extra dimming option within the accessibility. Options that would allow you to lower the screen brightness even further. But hey, by turning on dark mode, you can help keep the brightness down. And in this situation, it's important to understand that Honor includes multiple visual comfort technologies. One of these, which is challenging to demonstrate or capture on video, is the eye care feature with defocusing. Honor has conducted several studies that, in this instance, simulate certain myopia blurs designed to reduce eye strain. Therefore, in theory, it should provide a significantly more comfortable viewing experience compared to screens that lack these features. Along with the usual blue light reduction options and similar technologies, the device reaches a maximum of 120 Hz, ensuring smooth motion. Furthermore, the display stands out as one of the device's most impressive features. This is not only due to its excellent hardware, but is also enhanced by a range of good software options. The only thing that might be lacking is the additional dimming feature. In sound, the feel is a bit simpler, even though it does have stereo sound, and it also integrates a gain mode to the 200% that is going to make the audio sound louder. In reality, the audio is not perceived to be of such high quality. The treble, I think, is not as crisp. The bass also does not have as big or as strong a presence. The mid-bass and mid-high frequencies stand out the most. Fortunately, not with so much intensity as to get to hurt or something like that, but I would have liked access to an equalizer, and in this case it is only available when you have headphones connected, so the audio experience for the most demanding will fall short. Anyway, let's hear the test, but remember, it's not like live listening. Through software. Honor also integrates some other technologies, in this case, Honor Spatial Audio and Honor Stereo Audio, which supposedly would be a kind of Dolby Atmos that will try to extend the stereo setting, but only available when you use headphones, so it's not a device that pays too much attention to the audio from the speakers. And in other software features, we are going to find an independent volume control for each application. Just by expanding the volume control panel, which is handy when two apps are playing simultaneously. We will not find a headphone jack, which is typical in this category. As for wireless headphones, we only have access to the aptX and aptX adaptive codec. However, we will not find LDC or LHDC, so once again it falls a bit short. If you were hoping to enjoy high-resolution audio with wireless headphones, Around the device, we will discover 3 microphones, one of which is placed on the camera in a slightly unusual way. Likely more concealed, probably designed for noise cancellation purposes, so it appears. To have everything necessary to ensure this is a really excellent experience, let's hear a test.
Este es un audio grabado con los micrófonos integrados del Honor 400.
For making calls, it features a noise cancellation mode. This mode is said to be powered by artificial intelligence. However, I have to mention that when you switch this option on or off, there doesn't seem to be any noticeable difference.
Okay, esta es la prueba sin cancelación de ruido con inteligencia artificial y a continuación voy a encenderlo. En este momento está encendida la función de cancelación de ruido con inteligencia artificial. Vamos a ver qué tal están los resultados.
Now let's see how it performs in much noisier settings. As you notice, the gain is adjusted immediately at the highest volume, this to avoid distortions, although in case the volume goes down a little, it will be noticed exaggeratedly low due to the gain adjustment it made, but in general I think it behaves well. And we close this block with bad news because it comes with a vibration motor on the Z-axis, something we see in much cheaper devices. So, in this section, Honor has made a significant compromise in the user experience. This might go unnoticed by some users, but it's important to be aware. For instance, when you're typing on the keyboard or engaging with various elements of the user interface, the tactile feedback you receive won't be as high quality or premium as you might expect. This device's front camera is 21mm with an f2 aperture and a fixed focus on a 50 megapixel sensor. To quickly access the camera, press the on-off button twice, and really it functions with the screen both off and on. I find this gesture incredibly useful and agile. Also, be mindful if the blur effect is activated or not, because if you want to capture a picture of the beautiful landscape behind you and the portrait mode is enabled, it will be completely out of focus. So it's something that I personally don't really like. For some reason, it just doesn't switch over into photo mode. And you have to take into account that it's solely within the portrait mode where we will discover the beauty options. These options include a natural setting, a classic setting, or you can manually adjust each parameter. For all the available parameters, you have the ability to make the head appear smaller, the nose smaller, the eyes larger, sharpen the chin, apply facial retouching, adjust the makeup tone, enhance face lighting, and smooth the skin. So it possesses numerous parameters in case you need to appear fake like that. However, it's important to note that the device offers a sufficiently good response speed for this kind of continuous shooting, even though it doesn't integrate burst mode. Regarding the front camera, what we will encounter is the motion photography option, which observes that it might provide you with a small video fragment of the moment when you capture the picture, simply to help you relive those memories in some way. In addition, it incorporates artificial intelligence to suggest some engaging color filters. Access to the self-timer is not immediately visible and is concealed within the settings section. Moreover, it will include a floating shutter button that you can move and position anywhere you prefer. It also has a palm capture mode for enhanced convenience. Naturally, you can still utilize the volume buttons for added functionality. The front camera, in my opinion, appears quite impressive with regard to the level of detail it captures. It seems like it will provide excellent sharpness. As for the color rendition, I don't think it's completely accurate or exceptionally advanced, but given the price range, we can overlook that aspect. One notable advantage is that it offers a nice 21mm range, allowing you to be well framed in settings where you want the background to be visible. In backlit situations, you may notice the preview isn't optimized, but the outcome is favorable in terms of light and shadow balance. However, the contrast isn't very high, as we would prefer during the night. It's important to note that, in my opinion, the camera still performs quite well in terms of photography. It manages to maintain the textures adequately, although it's evident that the effort to avoid noise sometimes results in a slight loss of texture detail. However, at the very least, if you're in a well-lit area, the face will appear nicely. Interestingly, turning off the additional illumination of the screen, I like the result better. Notice that even my face comes out a bit more detailed and cleaner, so I wouldn't recommend using the screen flash simulation. Even in nighttime backlit scenarios, I find that the device It does a decent job without being overly impressive. Additionally, when taking portrait photos with this front camera in the evenings, the quality is quite satisfactory and good enough. Once more, the weakest aspect is noticeable in the darker areas. Here, it attempts to remove noise, but unfortunately it also removes some textures. Furthermore, in the daytime portrait, we observe that it struggles to maintain objects in sharp focus. As a result, the portrait taken with the front camera appears quite simple. On the back, there is a 16mm camera featuring an aperture of f2.2, and autofocus with a 12-megapixel sensor, meaning it would be an ultra-wide camera that also includes macro functions. Next, we have the 27mm camera featuring an f1.9 aperture autofocus, optical stabilization utilizing a Sony IMX906 200-megapixel sensor. Within the camera interface, we will find a button where we can select the various color interpretations that this camera integrates. Observe that it's set in a natural, vibrant or authentic mode, allowing you to select your preferred color rendition. Then pay attention to. We're also going to discover a very comfortable slider for zoom, along with an HDR indicator at the top. In this scenario, by sliding up, we can access the remaining options such as flash control, moving picture, and if you want the watermark to appear. Additionally, you'll find the image ratio, and you can load various filters though. It's important to note that we can preview all of them at the same time. We'll quickly access the timer, grid display for framing, and the level. The device responds quickly to long touches to straighten photos. With this camera is known for its speed, it's a really fast camera. By holding down the shutter, we can capture a burst of up to 100 pictures. During our test where we tried to capture the number 3, we noticed that the response speed is incredibly fast. It's important to note that in this case, we were actually taking the shot a little bit earlier. However, the burst itself takes more than a second to begin, so the burst is indeed somewhat slow to start. However, the gap between each photo is rather brief, which means if you were able to pinpoint the precise moment, you would be able to just anticipating the start of the capture. Right here on the camera, we have the ability to touch and adjust the exposure as well as the focus. Additionally, we can access more parameters right here, such as the metering type that can reach up to 6,400 and the shutter speed, which can extend up to 30 seconds. Next, we encounter exposure compensation, focus adjustment, and white balance. It's also a device capable of capturing images in RAW format using this special mode designed for more advanced post-development. I dislike needing to have for scanning QR codes, to access Google Lens via the upper left corner, and right here. We will indeed be able to perform this action. As for the document scanning, it won't be executed from the main interface either. Instead, you need to access to the specific document scanner mode. And note that in this case, it does allow you to use the ultra-wide camera. It also allows you to enable automatic capture, and it also allows you to select any special color filter you want. So it does have good options in this sense because it allows you to optimize the color and also to add pages to your document that you can also edit later to rotate, correct the crop, or even extract the text in digital format. So the scanner does work properly, and it is very positive because it also allows you to export to PDF directly from the camera without having to make further movements. The ultra-wide camera gives us good quality pictures, at least enough for the range. You don't see such a detailed picture, but I like that we don't witness too much chromatic aberration or distortion at the edges. Although it must be said that within the ultra-wide cameras, this is one of the less ultra-wide cameras because it has a 16mm perspective, so it is not exaggeratedly spacious. However, you'll notice a difference with the main camera because it's 27mm, not the usual 23mm of most phones. This phone's main camera offers a slightly different perspective, closer than most, and take note that in general, we could say that photography meets expectations without becoming something extremely outstanding. What truly stands out is the optimization achieved with the 200 megapixel sensor, because in this case we are referring to 2x digital zoom. It almost looks like a photo. Optical quality like having a 2x telephoto camera. Even when using the 4x digital zoom setting, it still appears to have optical quality. Therefore, I must emphasize that this sensor is utilized exceptionally well and it looks fantastic. And of course, when you zoom in further, you do notice it's digital, but honestly, it performs really well. And the image quality is excellent. Even without a telephoto lens, the short distance zoom is impressive. Now, let's check another zoom carousel. As I mentioned, up to 108 millimeters, where the 4x zoom is, the camera quality remains very good. Beyond that, yes, you will begin to notice that it is indeed digital zoom. However, it's important to point out that this is a higher quality digital zoom than most other devices offer without a telephoto camera. Despite this advantage, I personally find the maximum zoom capability of this device, which can reach an impressive 810 millimeters or 30x of digital zoom, to be somewhat forced and a bit excessive. It's also worth mentioning that in this particular instance, the photograph was taken without an internet connection. And as a result, I did not apply any artificial intelligence optimization to enhance the image further. In fact, that's a weak point, as I would have liked that when you go back to having internet connection, the device improves these pictures you took when you didn't have internet connection, but it doesn't. However, notice the difference between these photos. This one has been captured without AI and this one has been captured with AI enabled. It definitely improves the details a lot. It makes the photo look very good quality. Now here's another example. Notice how photography with 30x digital zoom without AI looks quite good. Honestly, the quality of the work isn't bad, but when you enable the AI, it becomes significantly sharper and clearer. Everything appears much better. That's the reason I strongly emphasize that it would be fantastic if you could take these types of pictures even without an internet connection. Somehow the device would save them as pending so that once you have an internet connection, they could be enhanced. Because if you go on a vacation without internet access, you wouldn't achieve the same picture quality in the zoom if you rely heavily on this connection. In fact, if there is a face present in the images, the processing will be very different. Notice that up to 108 millimeters, the processing is still very natural. It looks very good optical quality. Beyond that, it will start to look too artificial. It's quite brushy despite allowing us to achieve up to 30x digital zoom. However, it doesn't really provide good detail. This is a photo taken with 20x digital zoom. And even though artificial intelligence is enabled, there is no noticeable change due to the presence of a face. Notice how without any face present, the device will try to optimize the details. So consider this as just a limitation of the current artificial intelligence. If it were processed using artificial intelligence, it might potentially alter your face to resemble a similar one, but not exactly the same. This is why they have not yet enabled something like this in control scenarios. Light. As you can observe, the preview isn't optimized. Nevertheless, the result is favorable regarding the balance of light and shadow. This is true for both the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. However, once more, the contrast and color accuracy do not stand out much during nighttime. The ultra-wide camera performs well enough for photography, although still in darker areas it seems to lose quite a bit of detail, which gives us to understand that it is a camera that does not have such advanced capabilities. Interestingly, the main camera doesn't really improve, it still keeps the dark areas very dark, and if we start zooming in, even the focus might get a bit lost. We're made to understand clearly that the good quality digital zoom will only be available in daytime or in good light conditions. If you have less than optimal light conditions, it's not going to be able to maintain the same level of detail. By the way, with night mode, I think there is a significant improvement, especially for the main camera. Since we already have a bit more light coming in and the light area isn't overexposed anymore, it's actually recommended to use the night mode. Even when you're using the 2x zoom setting, you'll notice an improvement when you opt for the night mode for macro photography. This mode helps balance the exposure and enhances the details in your photos. I already mentioned to you that the ultra-wide camera enables us to zoom in to an extremely close distance and achieve a really good level of detail. Therefore, this would be one of the effective ways to capture macro shots using this device. And if you attempt to use the main camera, it could be quite challenging because the focus tends to be very inconsistent due to the inherent characteristics of the sensor itself. However, although it might be possible, it is more advisable to use the ultra-wide camera, especially for taking pictures that are very distant. Note that the panorama mode is simple. It doesn't maintain such a high level of detail. It also doesn't have a good dynamic range, so it could overexpose and burn the sky. So panoramic photography is not a highlight. For moving pictures, the device doesn't perform very well either. And note that objects could come out swept or distorted, at least in automatic mode. Obviously, if you enter the professional mode, you could move several parameters to make the picture better quality even in motion, but the device intelligently can't adapt it. For portrait photography, Honor takes the collaboration with hardcore to another level. In this case, we're going to find different color manage profiles, different focal lengths. So portraits look of good quality if you keep foreground objects in focus. Although when you zoom in a little bit, you can see that it is digital zoom, unlike in normal mode where we are not in portrait photography. So I think the pictures will not be as detailed as we would have liked, although they do have a nice bokeh effect. The coloring is also very nice. In fact, hardcore offers different color profiles, and when you don't use the hardcore profiles, it will even change the watermark. But in addition, when using Honor's own profiles, we can observe really good quality. As you can notice, in certain profiles, the shadows appear more pronounced, offering a higher contrast. Additionally, you might notice a bit more warmth in certain tones. Overall, portrait photography can definitely be enjoyed on this phone. An interesting feature is that in scenes with portrait motion, the device has the capability to freeze the image effectively. In this case, I waved and the device took a good portrait. For video, all cameras offer 4K at 30 FPS, which is great and not disappointing. Note the device includes a bokeh effect mode in Full HD, along with facial beauty mode, though not in 4K. And recording a video, we're going to be able to have this slider for zooming. We also have a button to take pictures, another button to pause and resume your recording, one more button to turn on the flashlight without cutting the video recording, and you can even enable or disable noise cancellation. But what I like the most is that it also integrates the mode to rotate the front camera, something that very few devices integrate this without. Cut your video recording and make sure to include a brief moment for transition. But it's pretty cool in this regard, a user experience. And within the professional mode, it also integrates a video recording mode so that even while you're recording, you can manipulate things like metering type, ISO, shutter speed, compensation, focus, and white balance. And this is what recording with the ultra-wide camera would look like. And notice that we see a good enough level of detail, but nothing too appealing. I think it just delivers as a good mid-range. Switching between cameras is a bit jerky if you press the shortcuts, although if you're swiping in the zoom, there can be a bit smoother switching. The main camera will also record in good enough quality, but nothing too outstanding in backlight. Note that the shadow area comes out a little darker than it should, but at least it doesn't. It makes such aggressive jumps in exposure when it detects or fails to detect the face. In this particular case, it was an overcast day, creating a rather complex backlight situation. I believe it manages the situation quite well. To truly understand its capabilities, you would need to compare it directly with some of its competitors under identical conditions. However, I feel it performs satisfactorily and doesn't disappoint. On the other hand, it does fall short during nighttime. The ultra-wide camera, specifically, performs quite poorly in low-light conditions, which is disappointing. The camera has excessive noise and very low light input. Moreover, the brighter areas aren't exposed properly either. Here, you'll notice a drastic change when switching to the main camera. It has a much better light input, completely superior. Watch closely as I switch it and you'll see the difference. It's highly recommended to use the main camera in low light conditions. However, this does reduce the spaciousness significantly. This main camera records well as expected in mid-range. While it doesn't highlight the brightest areas as well, it still provides good quality. As for stabilization, I believe the ultra-wide camera stabilizes adequately given its wide angle. It's the recommended camera for walking, running, but lacks optical stabilization. So when it comes to more subtle movements, I believe that even the main camera actually performs better. However, for activities like running, due to the tighter lens setting it possesses, it might be more advisable and beneficial to use the ultra-wide camera in this situation. I think the stabilization does not become a highlight of this cell phone. The focus, the ultra-wide camera handles it a little slow. Although remember that it allows you to focus from very close as to have even a kind of macro video, something that not all devices allow. On the other hand, the main camera has a focus that responds much faster. It is practically instantaneous, but you cannot be so close to small objects. However, I believe the quality is quite sufficient. So, generally speaking, if you have favorable lighting conditions, I think the focus will not let you down or anything like that. Regarding the zoom, I had already mentioned to you that it can indeed be smooth transitioning from the ultra-wide camera to the main camera as long as you utilize the slider. Although please note how in this particular case there was a moment where the video was completely frozen. Something quite strange that hopefully they will correct with an update, but the video zoom is really very bad, unlike the good quality we had seen in photography. Unfortunately, in the video what you see is just a stretched image which has too much graininess and is of low quality. In this particular case, we will discover two distinct slow motion modes. In both situations, the file is actually recorded at a very high rate of frames per second, allowing you to slow down the specific part you want. It can be recorded in full HD at 120 frames per second, or it can be recorded in HD at up to 240 frames per second. And I believe that in this regard it performs admirably well for what you would typically anticipate at this particular price range. Additionally, there is a fast camera mode available, which fortunately includes stabilization. Furthermore, you will observe that the video is presented in 4K, and it even includes manual parameters for adjustment, though the basic speed setting is 15x, which might be too quick for human movements, but it can reach up to 1800x. For recording even plant growth and more sophisticated things, so for those kinds of scenarios, more appealing the amount. Fast. The front camera provides a satisfactory level of detail, and it offers the capability to utilize two distinct levels of zoom. I want to remind you that this was a cloudy day, which means there was not. It's evident that while the photo provided a detailed image, the video lacks intense lighting, and you'll notice it needs excellent lighting for optimal results. In backlight, it won't perform well, but it stabilizes adequately. While the photo provides a detailed image, the video does not. Due to it doesn't have a very good aperture, it lacks more light input, and at night it does a good job of eliminating noise, but if you're in static conditions, it recovers color well enough for the video to be acceptable. However, if you begin recording scenes that have a bit more movement, you'll start to notice how the noise is being attempted to be reduced, And in doing so, it also removes a good amount of detail from the footage. Therefore, I believe that video captured with the front-facing camera might not stand out as much as one would hope. Although, to be honest, I initially thought it would perform worse at night. Keep in mind that you have the option to use the screen as a flash simulation, which can help to brighten up your face a bit more effectively. It's not outstanding, but for the price, we can overlook it. And finally, please take note that it also offers a dual recording mode, allowing you to use both the rear and front camera simultaneously. In this picture-in-picture mode, you can move the frame wherever you want. You can also rotate to activate two rear cameras at the same time or put it in split screen, and all this without cutting the video recording. In fact, you can also zoom while recording and autofocus is enabled, although in this case the video is recorded in a more panoramic format and only in Full HD, which supposedly goes at 30 frames per second, but honestly, the motions appear even slower. In the software, we will find Android 15 and Magic OS 9.0. Although it has the latest Honor, it still does not have the latest Android. So I think Honor has been improving on the software side, differentiating itself. More and more from Huawei, but it still does not have enough speed to practically keep up with Android releases, however. Excellent news is that it comes. With 6 years of software updates and 6 years of security patches, you're assured of this device's durability right from the start. The software support, I really enjoy the customization options available for the lock screen. There are numerous proposals and templates that you can fully personalize to suit your preferences. Some templates even allow you to merge two images creatively. Additionally, it detects depth, enabling one image to appear above the clock. This clock is also customizable with a variety of font styles and colors. I truly appreciate the extensive level of customization you can achieve for the lock screen. As some have a picture frame for a nice look, to this screen lock, and together with the lock screen we will discover the always on display mode. In this instance, it can indeed function in full screen mode, quite similar to what we observe on iPhones and some Galaxy devices. However, the screen only drops to 60 Hz with static content, which would consume excessive battery, so in this full screen mode it will not remain always on. Instead, it only activates through touch to display it. If you select partial screen mode, the screen may stay on, but by default it shows only when touched. This screen, or you could program a schedule, but I insist since this screen does not have LTPO technology, it will consume quite a lot of battery to have this always on display mode. We will also find the Magic Capsule, another important element in the software of this device, which in this case, for example, could show us when you are making an audio recording, or the timer, and even the controls of your music player, which are compatible with your music player. With any music player, ensuring you have all the necessary elements of your music player required. The mini screen offers great system-level functionality without third-party app compatibility. The one-handed mode will resize the entire screen, which is a positive feature. However, activating it can feel a bit odd. You have to almost reach the opposite side of the screen and scroll at the bottom towards the area where your hand is. In this situation, it does not allow you to resize this mini screen or change its position, but at least it doesn't just slide down like some other devices do. We then discover a few customization options for the traditional gestures, like double tapping the on-off button. By default, this action opens the camera, but now there are new gestures being added as well. There are also shortcuts like turning on the flashlight, which could also be useful depending on the type of user you are. In fact, we can also configure what we want to happen when we double press the volume down button. This one we have the device locked, and it's also going to be a pretty comfortable gesture, so I quite like its implementation with gestures. We can take screenshots by sliding 3 fingers down. By default, they're saved in global favorites, an area for storing screenshots or web pages to read offline. You can set if 3 fingers go to global favorites or just take standard screenshots. It also maintains the knuckle gestures inherited from Huawei or record the screen by double tapping with 2 knuckles as well. But now let's talk about the sidebar, which is going to be activated with a gesture similar to the back gesture, but without releasing your finger. Here it will offer us direct access to the favorite space, which, as I was saying, allows us to save screenshots, offline web pages, or even from the gallery or system applications we could drag certain items to. This part lets devices share a clipboard. If you happen to own an Honor tablet or laptop, you might find that you can synchronize these sections. However, through this sidebar, we also have the capability to access apps that will operate in a floating mode. It's important to note, though, that in this specific case, it only permits us to have a single app open at any given time while using this mode. And if we combine it with the split screen mode, we could have a maximum of 3 apps open at the same time, which is not as advanced as other devices, but I think it is a useful basic multitasking level. Many users discover that in this particular case, The floating window mode indeed supports a wide range of apps, including YouTube and Instagram, which are often unavailable on other devices. With these floating window modes, the device also incorporates a beauty filter mode specifically for video calls. However, interestingly, it doesn't seem to be available in any application, making it appear to be a completely unnecessary and useless mode. But one thing that is useful is the new motion sickness relief mode, which will enable certain points on the screen as your hand movement is. So believe me, when you go on a auto these points if they help you avoid motion sickness more importantly, and it is something that so far we have seen in very few Android devices. The iPhone was the first to put it on. I like that Honor is putting it on this device as well, and with a very easy access directly from the control center you can enable it. Another good addition is Honor Docs, which will allow us to explore the documents we have on our device but also allows us to create Word, Excel or PowerPoint documents without the need for any special subscription or anything like that, which always comes in handy. Really good. Additionally, it integrates a variety of tools to convert images, Word documents, spreadsheets or slideshows into PDFs. It can even combine multiple PDFs into one or split a PDF, which are quite interesting utilities typically found in other applications. However, those might become paid or include advertising and similar features. We truly appreciate Honor compiling these features in Honor Docs for users. In the gallery, you can select multiple photos and press compare, movements or zoom sync, letting you easily view details and decide which photos you like or want to delete. So it's actually quite a straightforward and easy method to select the best photo. Moreover, it introduces a feature that allows you to create an instant movie. This feature will utilize specific templates, enabling you to select photos and videos. Then, automatically the device can produce a basic edit for you. In fact, if you prefer, you could also access the option to edit with more detailed specifications. This video I created for you contains a good enough editor with several functions. It's not such a basic editor, it even has keyframes, so I like the level of editing you can achieve here. And of course you can export without any watermark, no need to pay subscriptions or anything else, so I think the built-in video editor is a very nice addition. Concerning the functions of artificial intelligence, I have already created a separate video for you. In that video, I explain in detail all the functions of Honor Magic OS 9.0 that utilize artificial intelligence. You can refer to that video to learn more about these features. And some new features, so it is a device full of features. We find suggestions and intelligent recognition, also quick shortcuts to share content, subtitle generation, content translation, writing tools, and of course various editing functions. In photography, although obviously the most striking of them will be the image to video function, since you simply choose any photograph, even photographs that you have not taken with this device and this cell. Phone will intelligently transform this photograph into a video. Clearly, in order to do that, you're going to need to have an internet connection available. And for the rest of the AI features of the device, the truth is one of the most attractive features I've seen in cell phones. Seamlessly integrated into the gallery, you just need to enter the create section. The video is in HD, and it should be mentioned that while it may not be extremely advanced, it is comparable to other AI services that often require extra payment. The fact that Honor offers this to its users is indeed positive news. Though it's worth noting it has limited uses until September 30th. You'll have 3 uses daily. This applies to Mexico, but it may differ elsewhere. After September 30th, you'll have 15 available. Uses per month, so try not to waste them too much because honestly the outcome is quite appealing. Sometimes it provides a basic movement to people or pets, but I found the result more impressive in landscapes. It can even create effects that seem like they were recorded with a drone or cranes and other more advanced techniques. I truly appreciated the result. This is a primary function of this cell phone and something we can really emphasize. Remember, in the description there's a video where I explain in greater detail how all the AI features of this phone operate. Additionally, it includes Circle to Search and Google's Gemini Assistant. Make sure to check it out for a comprehensive understanding. For security, we will find the fingerprint reader inside the screen. It is an optical reader, so it will emit strong light to recognize the fingerprint well. It allows a maximum of up to 5 records, giving everything you need to have a good experience, and being integrated inside the screen also. Includes a good variety of different recognition animations for you to choose your favorite. The device additionally incorporates facial recognition technology. However, it is quite basic. Despite being a simple 2-dimensional recognition system, it still stands as a decent option. This feature, although not advanced, provides a satisfactory level of functionality. For users who require basic facial recognition capabilities, add recognition options with face covers or a second registration to be more accurate when you wear or don't wear your glasses. And we are also going to find many security and privacy tools like the safe, where you can store your private files. app lock for second verification before accessing an app. And there's also a touch of duplicity with the private space and the parallel space. Both of these functions will enable you to access an entirely different space within the same cell phone, which is essentially like having another cell phone inside, equipped with its own separate accounts, unique applications, and much more. Additionally, it offers the feature to hide applications, or alternatively, use the twin app feature. This will enable us to clone messaging applications and some other additional applications such as Amazon, for example. This way we can manage two accounts within the same space without needing to create extra spaces inside the cell phone or similar setups. What it doesn't integrate is child mode or private VPN, but it integrates Honor. Its own password manager without relying on Google's manager, which I like. Even though the user interface in the security and privacy section is customized to look like pure Android instead of Magic OS, which appears quite unattractive and peculiar, at least the password manager is from Honor. In this instance, it allows synchronization across all your Honor devices, making it much easier to fill in passwords. It also integrates an antivirus within the system manager that comes in collaboration with TrustLock. So I like that Honor does not depend on the 100% of the functions developed by Google. But anyway, it does bring the rest of Google features such as Smart Unlock or functions to find your device and more that I also leave you in another video available in the description, as there are several options that you can know in depth in that content. The battery capacity is 6000 mAh. It is a silicon and carbon battery, although unfortunately in my tests, this is one of those data that impresses but the use disappoints. In the foreground drain test, it reached 4 hours with 16 minutes. That is even a lower figure than other devices with 5000 mAh batteries have achieved. However, in the background draining test, it reached 7 hours and 14 minutes, giving us to understand that the system intelligently manages the energy consumption of the applications running in the background and does it correctly. But in the test, playing YouTube videos with the screen brightness at 50% only reached 11 hours with 34 minutes, being a complete disappointment. Therefore, perhaps for video playback, it might not be the optimal choice, as it appears that the screen might consume a lot of energy. However, for daily application use, it could perform adequately. Just don't be overly impressed by the 6000 mAh figure. Surely. Some users, if will require to use the power saving mode that is available and in emergencies, is also available ultra saving mode, and when the battery has been exhausted, in this case you have integrated in the box a charger 80 watts, which is excellent news. Although let's see the graph, really the maximum power of the charger is reached only during the initial phase of charging occurs, and subsequently the speed decreases significantly. It even falls below 25 watts, meaning the device does not achieve a rapid charging rate. Consequently, the charging process is not particularly swift. Overall, in a total of 15 minutes, it charges up to 32%. In 30 minutes, it reaches up to 5.56%. The full charge completes in nearly an hour and a half because the last section slows down significantly. This occurs with the factory default settings since it comes with smart charging activated. Without smart charging activated, it actually performs differently. Quite similar. Even during the initial 15 minutes, it charged more slowly, reaching 28%. After 30 minutes, it increased to 51%, indicating a slower rate. However, in the final stage, the charger power didn't reduce as significantly as it did with active smart charging, but the truth is that fast charging has not seemed too surprising. This smart charging mechanism is to take care of the battery, so it will charge slower in the final stage, although curiously it does not have charging lock, which would be quite useful to always keep the cell phone plugged in the current in some usage scenarios. What it does integrate is intelligent battery capacity, which by having it enabled will not use the actual 100% of the battery, that is, even though its figure is 6000 mAh. If this option is enabled, it would use less than 6000 mAh, so disabling this option, you might have a little more autonomy, but the battery could degrade a little faster. As a user, you get to make the decision about what you want to use. However, it's important to note that you won't find wireless charging or reverse wireless charging here. These are features that some other manufacturers have already started to include in this price range as well. Regarding connectivity, we will discover support for 5Gi. Additionally, there's an option to block mobile data usage for certain applications, helping to prevent any unwanted data consumption. Furthermore, it includes Wi-Fi 6, ensuring download speeds are not just good but indeed quite excellent. A particularly great piece of news is its support for eSIM, allowing you to easily add mobile data services by just scanning QR codes, eliminating the need to insert a physical SIM card. That is why it is especially useful when traveling, and this device does have that option. We also find Bluetooth 5.4 NFC for mobile payments, although it comes without FM radio as expected in this category. It also comes with USB 2.0, so transfer speeds will be a bit low using the USB 2.0. a cable. However, it does feature OTG, allowing you to connect various accessories via this USB-C port. Yet it lacks MHL support. This means you cannot connect an HDMI adapter to link this cell phone. To an external display using a cable, it must be done wirelessly. Fortunately, in this particular case, it is capable of projecting in both mirrored and desktop modes. The mirrored projection can even hide notifications to ensure a good level of privacy, while the desktop mode lets us run applications in a windowed format similar to that of a computer, for instance. Thus, by connecting a mouse using a wireless keyboard together with another wireless keyboard could enhance your experience significantly. However, it is important to have a monitor that supports wireless screen projection. I must emphasize that it cannot project through a cable connection. Additionally, it includes Android Auto. Regarding sensors, it features an accelerometer, a geomagnetic field sensor, an orientation sensor, a gyroscope, and a physical proximity sensor. However, its activation is somewhat peculiar as it only works in certain vertical positions. Lastly, it also possesses infrared capabilities which can be accessed through Honor's app, allowing it to function as a universal remote control. The Honor ecosystem is really very good, inherited from Huawei, where we already see a very good interaction, although in this case we are finally seeing some differences between Honor and Huawei, which are still able to share certain technologies of their ecosystem. But Honor, like Huawei, offers its Magic Book laptops, also its Honor Pad, Honor Watch, Honor Band, or Honor earbuds, so it has all kinds of accessories to complement your purchase perfectly well. Actually, from the start, I mentioned that buying this cell phone comes with free headphones. And the clock. The way the devices interact has been getting better as time goes on. They provide technologies like Honor Connect, which allows you to connect calls across all your devices. Additionally, you can share your clipboard between all devices that are linked to the same account. Notifications can sync if enabled, or use your laptop's cursor on your tablet or phone, drag and drop content, use the phone's camera from the computer, and more. The reality is that one of the most significant strengths of Honor is its ecosystem. Very few brands, even to this day, can provide the same level of interaction across all their devices alongside the diverse range of products that Honor presents. This ecosystem ensures seamless connectivity and functionality among devices, making it stand out in the market. Furthermore, Honor now introduces an exciting feature known as sharing, with iOS enhancing its offerings and expanding its compatibility, where you will need to install Honor Connect from the iPhone or from the iPad. For now, it is not yet available for Mac, although it must be said that in this case it is not as easy interaction as it is in Oppo and OnePlus that also have an interaction with iPhone. In this scenario, you can't simply bring the devices close and accept the transfer to have the Honor Connect app open on the iPhone. The list of Honor shared devices will display the iPhone for sending, and you must approve the request. It's a positive step to breach Apple's closed ecosystem, enabling transfers between iPhone and Honor. However, you'll notice that even after completing the transfer, the devices remain connected, so you must disconnect them manually. Of course, Google also offers Quick Share to interact and send files to other computers or cell phones. Plus, it includes Google Fast Pair for swift pairing with accessories. However, Honor has its own system for its accessories, which I appreciate because it means Honor isn't overly reliant on Google regarding its ecosystem. Yet, in terms of services, it might still rely somewhat, since Honor doesn't. It provides its own cloud storage, at least not for photos and files. Therefore, it continues to depend on Google Drive in that aspect. Furthermore, Honor has yet to develop an app for managing home devices, which means you'd still need to rely on Google Home for that functionality, although it doesn't even come pre-installed. So, speaking specifically about smart home, Honor still has an outstanding issue. Interestingly, Honor offers its own app store with no name because it's called the App Store, but at least it also looks like a small alternative to Google Play Store. And in conclusion, Honor additionally provides its proprietary health platform. This platform is designed to gather and compile all the data from the wearables. By doing so, it offers you comprehensive information, detailed insights, and observable trends. Now let's test the performance of the Honor 400, which has the Snapdragon 7 Gen 3 processor, 12 GB of physical RAM, and 512 GB of internal storage. As you see, in this case, it took 2.8 seconds on average to open each application. Not the most powerful in the segment, but not bad. Now let's see how the RAM performs, because it has a very good physical RAM capacity. And also, Honor's virtual memory generally always performs very well. Combining two high-quality implementations will ensure a smooth experience even with many apps open. Here, I have 16 apps, and as you see, there are no restarts. And they might reload some internal content, but they're not reopening from scratch. The experience has been good, as you see. Let's switch between them faster so you can see it truly has been. Satisfactory performance testing is being conducted in this regard with numerous applications open simultaneously. Now observe carefully. Notice that even when scrolling through the applications, we shall witness good performance. Of course, there will be instances when the content needs to reload and it might take some time, but it isn't a significant issue. Notice that here we are also moving, and once again, it is going to perform quite well. With these brief exceptions where it needs to load new content, it generally performs with high quality. Now, let's take a look, for example, at how it performs in these types of applications that require graphics processing. In this case, we are also observing a good experience even when dealing with filters that are somewhat more complex. We see that the processor is quite efficient. It does not seem to have exaggerated problems. Obviously, it is not at the same level of premium flagship devices, but it is going to give us a good feeling when we are doing this execution. I was telling you that it has the Honor Turbo RAM, and in this case, the manufacturer does not allow you to disable that option or change the amount allocated, unlike other manufacturers. Regarding storage, definitely. The company has really excelled in this cell phone. With 512 GB of internal storage, it's an impressive amount for the price point. Filling it up will be quite a challenge due to its vast capacity, making it a standout feature. Additionally, it includes a useful small graph displaying what consumes the most space, along with a convenient option to clean it up. This feature is particularly noteworthy and enhances the user experience. It will intelligently scan to locate unwanted files, unused apps, duplicates, or by category. You can go exploring images, videos, audio, large files. In general, I think that the internal storage management is positive because of this type of features that will help us to filter the files that take up more space and the like. Definitely everything in this sense is positive. Although, for the more technical, we will run a test of the speed of this storage, because although it has a very large capacity, we will have to see how fast it can be. And note that in reading it gave us 1946 megabytes per second, and in writing 1813 megabytes per second. I think that's not bad at all, although it's obviously not at the level of a full flagship. But to make the performance clearer, let's go to a real life test. In this case, we have this video editor and we are going to export in 4K. Remember that in this case, we are using videos recorded with this cell phone that one by one have a total sum of 1 minute of duration. And that's it. It took a total of 1 minute and 17 seconds. It's really quite slow for these kinds of tasks where it's evident that neither the RAM nor the storage will provide the speed needed to assist with these activities. As you can see here, it performed poorly. Now let's talk about the games, interestingly. We'll find a hidden manager in the Configurations Applications menu. Here we can open this game manager to manually add undetected content and configure sidebar availability with tools. 8 dusted apps here that shouldn't be cleared or cleaned from RAM. We have manual brightness control and a switch to enable or disable during play. That's all in this setup. When we execute one of these contents, it will activate this additional options bar that will be available to us. Notice that it will display the screen's refresh rate, the CPU and RAM status, along with the performance profile we wish to use, whether it's a balance mode or a special gaming mode. Additionally, here we find the manual brightness control, accompanied by a switch that allows us to enable or disable it. Disable manual control. Additionally, we have the RAM clear button and the do not disturb button, enabling us to prevent interruptions with a single tap. Moreover, we can disable 3-finger gestures and similar features to prevent any unwanted activations. We also discover a section for game filters, which allows us to subtly modify the color interpretation of our screen during gameplay. Additionally, we have a feature that enhances screen sensitivity, but be aware that it will increase power consumption. There's also a section for taking screenshots or making screen recordings. Furthermore, we have the rotation lock and a part labeled as time help. This is essentially to access a timer here, which proves to be particularly helpful for arena-style games. In these games, it's important to keep track of when certain powers or abilities become available again, and other similar tasks. As you can see, it does not have as many functions as other devices more focused on gaming, but it does allow us to open floating applications to answer a message or something like that without the need to leave our game. In Call of Duty, by default, gives us very high quality at a rate more. We can go up to an ultra rate, although the quality drops to the lowest level, but this is expected in the price range. In fact, it has very good compatibility in this regard. In fact, take note of how in this particular case, we have the availability of several advanced visual effects. This is quite nice for those who enjoy a very detailed gaming experience. It's important to note that the result of our test was positive. We achieved an average of 59 frames per second, with the lowest point being just 52. Additionally, it maintained good temperature control throughout. So for gaming, I think yes, it would be a good tool, although as you saw, it doesn't offer too many software add-ons, but the performance experience will be very good. We prioritize refresh rate, reaching an average of 90 frames per second with the lowest at 88. It's a good performance, though low quality, which is expected for the price. Here, all content ran with high performance mode on and screen recording was default. It's done in HD, which is a bit disappointing, but fortunately you can now go up to full HD. Then we played Asphalt, and note that in this case, we kept it at 60 frames per second but raising several parameters to the highest possible quality, although still keeping the shadow resolution at the very high level and not at the highest possible. With this configuration, the device behaved really very well. 60 frames per second on average, lower peak at 58, so it practically maintains perfect stability. Next, we played SpongeBob SquarePants by default regarding high resolution and quality. To put an adequate test to its price, we lowered the quality to the medium level, but having 60 frames per second and the smoothing activated. And in this case, it must be said that the device is intelligent in terms of its management. That is, it realized that if it tried to go up to 60 frames per second, it was going to be a little more unstable. So it adapted by setting a limit of 40 frames per second. And that is why we see a brutal stability, but it did not reach the 60 frames per second that we wanted. It's important to mention it includes a technology known as GPU Turbo XQ engine, and this is a good example of it. The device will give priority to have a very stable experience, even if it can get to limit the highest frames per second. Next, we played CarX Street. It's important to note that we kept the default settings only increasing the frames per second limit to the maximum to see its potential. In this scenario, it caused some instability in the graphics, though the lowest peak was 39. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that we don't typically run this game at this price range, so I believe the result was quite positive. Consider that. This is a complex game with graphics, textures and reflections needing excellent processing, and this device performs acceptably. You can play well here, but demanding gamers might need something more powerful, which they might find in Red Magic options at this price. Generally, a 100% gaming devices make other sacrifices. This would be a much more balanced device that still provides an enjoyable gaming experience too. After that, we played Genshin Impact, which initially comes set to the low configuration by default. For the proper test, we increased its price to the medium level at 60 frames per second. The result has been positive once again, as we achieved an average of 52 frames per second. The lowest peak recorded was 39, and even though there is a slight amount of jitter, in reality, as it doesn't drop below 39, the device doesn't seem to freeze at any point or anything similar to that. We are once more set for a good experience in this segment. Finally, we default to playing guttering waves, whether on balanced settings or performance mode. We then increase to 60 frames per second, keeping most other parameters at default. In this case, it averaged 34 frames per second with a peak at 58 and a low of 24. When you realize it's quite a complex content, so it had numerous fluctuations, it didn't maintain very good stability. However, you can still manage to play with an execution A if you adjust the graphic quality according to the recommendations. That means if we had set a graphic quality with even more advanced visual effects, the device wouldn't have been able to provide us with the same performance experience. In this type of more demanding games is where you will notice that it is still not a 100% device focused on gaming, but for those who are not exaggeratedly demanding in terms of graphics and fluidity, they will find anyway a very good experience, especially for the good temperature control that has, which is something to emphasize very much, because in this case, being this the heaviest content, although still without such a complex graphical execution. And its configuration reached up to 41.7 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good. To sum up, I believe this is a device that can compete effectively in the market. It has several appealing features and some areas where it might not perform as well, which is typical for mid-range devices. In terms of design, I feel it meets the standards of good aesthetics and durability. However, its water resistance might fall a bit short, but this is offset by the 12-month warranty provided for any water damage, which is quite reassuring. If you buy from the official Honor store and it has 5 stars in the SGS drop test like many other devices, it complies well. The screen is actually quite good for its category, and it competes well, especially due to its very thin bezels. The sound quality is about average, and I think it doesn't really stand out much here, but it isn't disappointing either. The front camera, I believe, performs adequately, and the rear camera also does a decent job, even without a telephoto lens. The 200 megapixel sensor is well optimized, so for instance, if you compare it with another device that includes a telephoto camera, you'll notice that it is indeed a good camera. With just a 2x zoom and no additional enhancements, there truly won't be a significant difference. Therefore, I appreciate the optimization that Honor has successfully achieved in this aspect. In video recording, it meets expectations, but the battery deserves criticism. The specs impress, but usage disappoints because of 6,000 mAh. We anticipated that they would perform much better, and at least in the tests that we typically conduct on all cell phones, this one fell significantly below our expectations. However, the Honor ecosystem aims to enhance and strengthen the entire user experience with your watch, your tablet, your headphones, and the seamless interaction that is achieved between these devices. I believe that overall the performance does not disappoint in the end, and it has a great processor, excellent RAM, and superb storage. I believe that most users will find themselves quite satisfied with the level of performance that this device is capable of achieving. During my testing, it only showed limitations errors in video editing tasks, where for some reason it took a notably long time to export. However, this might be a problem that could be resolved with a future update or something similar. In general, as I mentioned before, it's a highly competitive device. Well, for now, we've come to the conclusion of this video. I truly hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you know you can express your appreciation. And we'll see you next time.